Sagittarius. 7 powerful secrets only the most evolved Sagittarians will ever discover. Have you ever felt like there's something inside you? Ancient, untamed, powerful. That no one else quite understands? A fire that doesn't burn to destroy but to reveal? A knowing that there's more to your story than even you have dared to admit? You walk through life with a sense of adventure, yes. But what many don't realize is that your quest has never truly been about places. It has always been about truth, about meaning. And lately, the universe has been whispering to you, sometimes in signs, sometimes in silence, that your time of remembering is near. This message is not for every Sagittarius. It's for the ones who have outgrown the surface-level definitions of who they are. The ones who have sensed, even in moments of doubt, that they are being called to embody something greater, deeper, more aligned with the essence of their soul. Today, I will share with you 7 sacred secrets. Not ordinary advice. Not traits you already know. These are energetic codes carried only by the most awakened Sagittarians. Truths that, when protected and practiced silently, unlock a frequency of power that cannot be seen, only felt. But here is the invitation. These secrets only expand in silence. The moment you share them carelessly, they lose their magic. They are meant to be kept within you like embers glowing beneath the surface, warming your presence, shaping your aura, guiding your path. So the question is not, will these secrets work for me? The question is, am I ready to become the version of myself that's been waiting in the wings? If you are, then let us begin. Gate 1. Your inner wilderness is not chaos. It's your power. Sagittarius, you've often been misunderstood as impulsive, inconsistent, or wild. But what if I told you the very part of you that others tried to label as too much is actually your deepest source of wisdom? You were never meant to walk a straight line. You weren't born to settle into tidy boxes or predictable roles. You are at your core a seeker. But more than that, you are a revealer of what's hidden. You chase experience not for novelty but for awakening. You need movement because your soul needs meaning. And when that fire within you is misunderstood, the world tries to tame it. But here's the secret. Your inner wilderness is not chaos. It's your power. Your deepest strength doesn't come from controlling life. It comes from trusting the wild rhythm of your own intuition. The way your body knows when it's time to leave a room, end a conversation, change a direction, before your mind can explain why. You are one of the rare few who can walk away not because you are lost, but because you've already outgrown where you were standing. But here's where it gets sacred. When you begin to honor this restlessness not as a flaw to fix, but as a compass to follow, everything changes. The first secret of your Sagittarius soul is this. Your power is unlocked not by obedience, but by internal alignment. I once worked with a woman named Celeste, a Sagittarius who had spent years climbing the academic ladder. She was a published researcher, respected in her field, secure in her status, but secretly dying inside. Every day felt like a performance. Her mind was praised, but her spirit was withering. She had spent years doing what was right. And yet, the call to leave, to write, to travel, to teach from her heart grew louder. Eventually, the internal pressure became unbearable. One morning, she walked into her department office, resigned, and booked a one-way ticket to Bali. People called her irresponsible, reckless, selfish. But she told me something I'll never forget. When I gave up the need to be understood, I finally began to understand myself. Fast forward 3 years, Celeste is now a published author, leading global writing retreats for women reclaiming their stories. She's never been happier, never more grounded. And she said this, I thought I was running away, but I was actually running home. Sagittarius, your journey will never look conventional, and it shouldn't. The world needs your perspective because you see what others are too afraid to name. You have an inner compass that points not north but true. And when you listen to it, even when others don't approve, you begin to vibrate at a level that magnetizes miracles. This is why your energy is so potent when you're aligned, and so scattered when you're not. Because your frequency is not designed to stay in stagnant environments. You are meant to roam not just physically, but spiritually. Through ideas, philosophies, dimensions of reality most people don't even know exist. You are not fickle. You are fluid. And in that fluidity is your sacred flame. But here's the deeper layer. Your inner fire is only powerful when it's directed inward first. That means learning when to pause, when to breathe, when to stop running from the stillness. Many Sagittarians get stuck in external motion and confuse movement with growth. But real growth often happens when you sit in silence and ask, what truth am I avoiding? The first secret isn't just about movement. It's about sovereignty. True freedom isn't doing whatever you want whenever you want. It's knowing why you're doing it and who you're becoming in the process. When you make decisions not from rebellion, but from inner alignment, you become unstoppable. You become the embodiment of what freedom really means. Being fully yourself without apology or explanation. And there's something else most people don't realize about you. You are deeply emotional. But because the world expects you to be lighthearted and fun, you often hide the depth of your sensitivity. You mask your fears with humor. You mask your longings with independence. But your vulnerability, that sacred softness beneath your fire, is not weakness. It's the fuel behind your courage. When you finally allow yourself to feel without judging what arises, whether it's grief, longing, loneliness, or awe, you unlock your wisdom. Your fire burns clearer. Your voice rings truer. You start speaking from a place that others can't explain, but they feel it. They feel your truth in their bones, even if they don't understand the words. This is what makes you magnetic, Sagittarius. Not your charm, not your optimism, but your honesty. And the more you align with that inner wildness, the one that doesn't follow scripts, the one that trusts its own rhythm, the more the universe responds. I want you to reflect on a moment from your past when you followed your gut, even though everyone told you not to. When you listened to that quiet, persistent knowing inside you. Maybe you walked away from a job, ended a relationship, took a risk, started over. Even if it scared you, even if it didn't make sense at the time, how did life shift afterward? What opened up that wouldn't have if you had ignored the call? That moment was your essence in motion. That was your soul saying, this is what it feels like to trust yourself. So here is your sacred practice for this first secret. Each time you feel that pull, that whisper of this is not it, or there's something more, pause, listen, ask, is this fear or is this truth? And if it's truth, follow it. Even if the path is uncertain, especially if it's uncertain, because Sagittarius, uncertainty is your spiritual terrain. It's where your magic happens. And remember, not everyone needs to understand your journey. It wasn't given to them, it was given to you. Your role is not to make your path digestible. Your role is to walk it with integrity. The more you honor this fire within, the wild rhythm that others can't tame, the more your presence becomes a living example of what freedom really looks like. Not chaotic, not careless, but conscious, sacred, purposeful. So protect this first secret well. Your wilderness is not a weakness. It is the very place your power is born. Gate 2. The wisdom of what breaks. Your grief is not the end. It's the opening. Sagittarius, you are known for your light, for your ability to rise, to keep moving, to find the meaning even in chaos. But there's a part of your story that often goes unnoticed. A quieter chapter. One that most people overlook because your smile hides it well. It's the chapter where something or someone you believed in fell away. Where a part of you trusted cracked. Where what you thought was forever ended. And in the silence that followed, even your famous optimism couldn't shield you. This is the part of your journey where you learn. Not everything that breaks is meant to be fixed. Some things are meant to transform you. The second secret for you, Sagittarius, is this. What breaks your heart often breaks your illusion first. And that's how you find what's real. You may not talk about your grief often. You may joke your way through it, distract yourself with plans, travel, new beginnings. But the pain still sits there. In your chest, in your gut, in the quiet moments when no one is around. And if you're honest with yourself, there are endings you've never fully allowed yourself to feel. Losses you tried to outrun. Goodbyes you never said aloud. I know, Sagittarius, feeling deeply is dangerous for you because once you feel it all. The truth is, your fire doesn't just burn outward. It burns through you. And when you allow yourself to sit with your grief instead of rushing past it, you begin to discover something most people never do. Your capacity to grieve is the exact same depth as your capacity to love. You can't have one without the other. I once worked with a Sagittarius named Kira. She was bright, charismatic, always planning her next big thing. But behind the sparkle was a story she hadn't told anyone. 5 years before, she had lost her younger sister in a sudden accident. And from that moment on, Kira never stopped moving. She changed cities, changed careers, changed friendships. She said, "If I stayed still for too long, I could hear the silence, and that silence reminded me she was gone." It wasn't until she attended a silent retreat, ironically, in a moment where she could no longer speak, that everything she had buried surfaced. She cried for 3 days, not just for her sister, but for all the parts of herself she had abandoned to keep going. And she told me, "I realized my grief wasn't a wound, it was a doorway. It brought me back to a truth I had forgotten. Love doesn't end when someone leaves. But I do have to grieve the form it used to take." Sagittarius, you don't have to keep carrying your losses in silence. You don't have to keep pretending it doesn't hurt. You are allowed to ache. You are allowed to break. You are allowed to miss what used to be. Because what you feel is sacred. And healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering with reverence, not pain. The second secret is not about getting over your loss. It's about letting it shape you consciously. About trusting that whatever left your life made space for what your soul truly came here to experience. That every closed door, every betrayal, every fated connection was not just an ending, but a redirection. A sacred release. And yes, grief will test your faith. It will make you question who you are, why things happen, what it all means. But this is where your Sagittarian magic shines. Because deep within you, even beneath the sadness, lives a spark that says there is more. More life, more beauty, more love. Not in the same form, but in a deeper way. In a truer way. You've always been able to rise again. But now you are learning how to rise wiser. This time without armor. This time not by escaping but by integrating. You don't have to run to feel free. You can stay. You can face the ruins. And from within them build something softer. Something more real. So here is your sacred practice for this gate. Create space to mourn what you never had the words for. Write a letter to the version of yourself who had to carry that pain alone. Light a candle for the love that never got to bloom. Name what ended, not to bring it back, but to bless it for what it gave you. Because even your endings were teachers. And then slowly return to your life. But not as the one who hides the hurt. Return as the one who walks with it. Tenderly, honestly, reverently. You don't need to be fearless. You only need to be faithful. To the truth of your experience. To the rhythm of your healing. To the wisdom that lives in your scars. Because Sagittarius, your grief is not a weakness. It's the sacred confirmation that you've lived. That you've loved. That your soul has roots deep enough to feel the full spectrum of being human. The world may not see this side of you. Let them keep seeing the fire. But you know the truth. You know that underneath your laughter is a strength carved from loss. A strength that doesn't need to be loud to be radiant. A strength that says, yes, I have been broken, and still I rise. With more clarity, more compassion, and more courage than ever before. So protect this secret. Let your grief be your guide, not your jailer. Let it open you, not define you. Because the one who has loved and lost, and still chooses to open again, is the one whose light cannot be extinguished. Gate 3. When the soul remembers. The sacred language of Sagittarius love. There is a kind of love, Sagittarius, that you don't find. It finds you. Not with logic. Not with timing. Not with effort. But with resonance. A love that doesn't knock on your door politely, but instead arrives like déjà vu. Uninvited, undeniable, and deeply familiar. And the moment it appears, something inside you whispers, I know you. This is not the kind of love that fits into romantic comedies or social media stories. It's the kind that awakens something ancient in your soul. And for someone like you, wild, restless, ever seeking, that kind of connection is both terrifying and magnetic. Because for all your freedom, all your independence, all your fire, what your soul has always longed for is not to be tamed, but to be truly seen. The third secret, Sagittarius, is this. Your soulmate is not the one who completes you, but the one who mirrors your deepest self back to you. With no filter, no judgment, and no desire to change you. You may already know this. Perhaps you've felt it before. A glance across a room that felt like a memory. A conversation that skipped small talk and dove straight into the soul. A presence that didn't pull you in but called you home. That is the frequency of sacred love. And for Sagittarius, whose heart is so often misunderstood as reckless, this kind of love is not a possession. It is a recognition. But here's what few understand. That kind of love will not come when you are trying to find it. It comes when you are finally rooted in your truth. When you are no longer performing a version of yourself to be chosen. When you stop auditioning for intimacy and start radiating authenticity. Soulmate love is not about pursuit. It is about alignment. I once worked with a Sagittarius man named Theo who had been through a string of relationships that burned hot and fast, but never lasted. He said, "I keep falling for potential. I fall in love with their future, not their present." And underneath his charm was a quiet ache. The fear that if someone really saw his need for space and depth, they'd walk away. But after a year of radical self-honesty, therapy, journaling, time alone, he told me, "I finally stopped looking." And then she appeared. Not flashy, not dramatic, just true. They met at a local writing workshop. She wasn't his type. She was calm, grounded, soft-spoken. But her presence disarmed him. She didn't try to impress. She just listened with her whole body. And for the first time, Theo said, "I didn't feel like I had to perform. I could just be." Their love grew slowly, quietly. And yet it was the most intense experience he'd ever known. Because it wasn't built on sparks, it was built on recognition. Sagittarius, this is your sacred lesson. When love no longer needs to excite you, it finally gets to heal you. You don't need someone who matches your fire all the time. You need someone who understands it, who doesn't try to extinguish your wanderlust or compete with your vision, but instead holds space for your becoming. Someone who doesn't need you to shrink, soften, or stay, but who meets you right where you are and says, "You don't have to choose between love and freedom. I'll walk beside you through both." But before that person can meet you, you must meet yourself at that same level. You must stop negotiating your essence to be loved. You must stop making yourself smaller just to fit inside someone else's idea of security. You must believe that a love rooted in freedom is not a fantasy. It is your birthright. This is why the journey to soulmate love always begins with solitude. Not loneliness, but sacred solitude. The kind where you begin to understand your patterns. The kind where you stop chasing chemistry and start honoring connection. Where you stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing yourself. So here is your sacred practice for this gate. Write a letter, not to your future partner, but to your own heart. Apologize for the times you settled. Thank it for its resilience. And promise from this moment forward to love it the way you wish someone else would. Then go live that promise. In your boundaries, in your standards, in your stillness. Because the energy you offer yourself sets the frequency of who you attract. And when that soulmate does arrive, and they will, you'll know. Not because of butterflies, but because of clarity. You will not feel out of control. You will feel home. And in their eyes, you won't see a fantasy. You'll see yourself. Your truest self. Reflected, respected, loved. So keep your heart open, Sagittarius, but don't rush. Don't seek love to escape yourself. Let love find you inside yourself. The right person will not interrupt your path. They will walk it with you, not behind you, not ahead of you, but beside you. With reverence, with laughter, with shared wonder for a world you both want to explore, hand in hand. Remember this secret well. Your love story will not be written by fate. It will be written by frequency. And the more you align with your truth, the more inevitable that sacred love becomes. Gate 4 between two worlds. When the old you fades and the new you hasn't arrived. There comes a moment, Sagittarius, when nothing makes sense. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because your soul is no longer speaking the same language as your past. You wake up, and the routines that once grounded you now feel empty. The people you used to laugh with no longer understand your silence. The goals you used to chase now seem irrelevant, like echoes from another life. And inside, something is shifting, quietly, invisibly, but undeniably. You are not who you used to be. But you're not yet who you're becoming. You are between. This is the secret few talk about. The fourth truth of your Sagittarius awakening. Spiritual growth doesn't always feel like clarity or light. Sometimes it feels like being lost in fog. And yet, that fog is holy. When the soul evolves, the ego panics. The ego craves control, proof, evidence. But the soul works in whispers, in intuition, in silence. And so you may find yourself in a strange space, deeply aware that something within you is transforming, but completely unsure what to do next. You try to make plans, but nothing sticks. You try to explain your inner state to others, but they look at you with confusion, or worse, pity. But I need you to know this, Sagittarius. You are not lost. You are recalibrating. I once guided a Sagittarius woman named Amira through this very season. A fierce humanitarian, always in motion, leading campaigns, teaching workshops, traveling to places no one else dared to go. But one day, without warning, she felt everything slow. Emails went unanswered. Her energy vanished. Her desire to be visible disappeared. She said to me, "I don't feel like myself." And I told her gently, "That's because your self is shedding its skin. The real one is coming forward now." She cried for weeks, not because she was sad, but because for the first time in years she wasn't doing. She was feeling. And through that silence, her next calling revealed itself. Not from her head, but from her heart. Today she still travels, but now as a spiritual guide. Not to fix others, but to walk beside them. Her fire didn't go out, simply changed form. Sagittarius, you are not here to only explore the external world. You are here to explore the inner one, the landscapes of consciousness, the terrain of trust. And right now, your soul is asking you to trust not what you see, but what you sense. The signs are subtle. You're waking up at strange hours. You feel disconnected from people who used to be close. You cry at random things, or feel an odd numbness that wasn't there before. You sense something is off, but can't explain what. These aren't problems. They're signals. Signals that your energetic frequency is rising. And the old structures of your life can't hold the new vibration. You might feel isolated during this time, misunderstood, like you're walking through life underwater. But this isolation is not abandonment. It's protection. The universe is cocooning you, shielding you from noise so you can hear your own soul. And when you emerge, you will be different. Not better, not brighter, but truer. So what do you do when you don't know what to do? You wait. You listen. You simplify. You stop trying to figure it out. You stop demanding answers. You start honoring what is. You let yourself rest. You allow the not knowing to be enough. You sit with the ache and you stop trying to make it performable. You stop pretending you're fine. You begin trusting the process instead of the outcome. And here's the quiet miracle. The moment you stop resisting the unknown, it begins to soften. Clarity arrives not in lightning bolts but in whispers. In a phrase that lands differently. In a moment of stillness that suddenly feels safe. In a dream. A song. A stranger's passing comment. These are the breadcrumbs of your soul's guidance. Sagittarius, your fire is not gone. It is being refined. The version of you that used to run toward everything is now being trained to receive. You are learning the highest form of spiritual strength. Surrender. So here is your practice. Create sacred space in your day to do absolutely nothing. No journaling. No manifesting. Just breathing. Just being. Just listening. You don't need to interpret the silence. You just need to allow it. And within that space, begin speaking to your guides, to your soul, to your future self. Not with desperate questions, but with gentle prayers. Show me what I need to see. Help me trust what I cannot yet understand. And slowly, like dawn, the light will return. Not all at once, but enough to take the next step. Remember this. Just because something hasn't arrived doesn't mean it isn't on its way. The seeds planted in the dark are still sacred. The becoming is still becoming. And when the new path appears, when your soul softly says, "Go this way," you'll move with a confidence that doesn't come from logic, but from alignment. Because by then, you'll no longer be chasing clarity. You'll be clarity. So let this gate hold you. Let this not knowing purify you. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not late. You are exactly where you need to be, between the old and the new, between the question and the answer, between the skin and the soul. And when you finally emerge, Sagittarius, you won't just walk differently. You'll carry the quiet power of someone who trusted the dark long enough to find their own light. Conclusion. You are not becoming someone else. You are returning to yourself. Take a breath, Sagittarius. Feel the quiet beneath your thoughts. The still flame that's always been there, burning not to destroy but to guide. You've walked through much in this journey. The wild beauty of your fire, the ache of your goodbyes, the longing for sacred love, the surrender to the unknown. And now, as we close this chapter, I want you to remember something simple and true. You are not becoming someone else. You are returning to yourself. This entire journey, every rise and fall, has been leading you back to your own essence. Not the version of you the world expected, but the deeper truth that was waiting behind the noise. The one who doesn't need to prove, the one who doesn't need to run, the one who can stand in stillness and say, I trust the wisdom of my own becoming. You don't need to rush toward the future. It is already being shaped by the frequency you now carry. You don't need to cling to the past. It has done its sacred work. What remains is presence. What remains is alignment. What remains is you, clearer, wiser, freer. And Sagittarius, if this message resonated with you, if it reflected your truth in any way, I gently invite you to support the space that brought it to you. You can share this video with someone who's walking their own foggy path. You can leave a comment with your reflections, so others know they're not alone. You can subscribe so you stay connected to this soul-led space. And if you feel called to leave a small tip or donation, know that it helps me continue creating these transmissions with depth, devotion, and love. No pressure, just presence. The smallest gesture means the world. Most importantly, take these words with you. Let them live inside you not just as inspiration, but as permission. Permission to trust yourself, to walk slowly, to choose differently, to shine silently. You are not late. You are not behind. You are exactly where your soul needs you to be. And I'll be right here walking beside you whenever you need a reminder of who you truly are.